All right, I'm ready to speed now. Okay, I want you to freeze. And I want you to make one small shift. You can make one small shift. Okay? That's all this is. That's all this is. It's just a shift. And I think, Wendy, you alluded to that. It's just the little nudge, little shift in, okay, for those of us that have lived here a while, things kind of get mundane, routine, pretty ordinary. Sometimes we just need that little shift. I know if I'm standing at my house and I make a little shift, I see a different house, right? We're all so super close to each other. So a shift can make a world of difference. But I do think that there's times where we feel like we just did a 180. And I really do think that that's when the Spirit of God is just saying, hey, I need you to pay attention way over here. But really, day in and day out, living sent is just making that shift. Okay, we are going to unpack quadrants, circles, and hubs. Quadrants, circles, and hubs. There's a whole, each of them have a chapter in the book. And I'm going to unpack what all three of these are and how we live them out. And they're going to be up on the screen as we work through each one of them. I do want to say this, and I think this is really important, and you just saw a great example up here on stage. All of this really requires communication with your spouse on how you're living, how you're processing life here. And it's usually, one of you are having a really crummy day here in the city, and the other one's like, I'm loving it here. And just having those conversations really does help with expectations. A few pointers I will say on this is that we are without excuse when it comes to having conversations with our spouse, whether it's a text message, a phone call, an email. I do think if you have a date night and you're focused in on, okay, we got to talk about our calendar, we got to plan where we're going on our vacation, are we going to visit family, we're going to go do something on our own. Like, I do think when you have these conversations, don't call that a date night. Call that a strategic night, okay? Call it something else. Call it something else, or else one of you are going to be highly disappointed. We have learned to have family meetings at our house, and that is just because we are now kind of going in different directions. I now can't just keep everyone with me. So family nights are really strategic. I love, Wade, how you pointed out, Justin, I think you said, where you're not just planning for the week, you're planning for the month. You're really trying to see, okay, what does this look like for a month? I think that's great. That's great. So do have conversations with your spouse. Another bit of a little homeworks that you can, or takeaways. Conversation with spouse, praying out loud together as a family. Some of you did not grow up in homes where that was done, and you're the one that is starting out that legacy. Again, keep it simple, keep it honest, keep it ongoing. Tell your stories at bedtime, okay? Set the book down and pick up your book. Tell your story to your kids at bedtime. Kavita, because she's came into our family midway, she's always asking us questions about our childhood because she's kind of hearing them late in the game. But tell your childhood stories. Tell what it was like growing up. So I think that's just a great way of starting your storytelling experience. Step it up in your building or neighborhood with the kids, and then plan a day of rest. So those are the 5 takeaways. Conversation with spouse, praying out loud together as a family, tell your stories at bedtime, step it up in your building or neighborhood with your kids, and then plan a day of rest. Okay, quadrants. Quadrants. Okay, quadrants, and you go ahead and throw up the picture there. Okay. The concept of quadrants is to maximize impact in 4 physical locations. Quadrants are literal locations. You've got work, home, school and play, and church. So you want to think about what, and I'm talking specifically to San Francisco, but you want to think about what neighborhoods are those in. Some of you aren't living in quadrants, you're only living in 2 of them because everything can fit into 2. That's awesome. But I would say most of us, we could very well live in and do life in 4 quadrants. Each quadrant represents where you do most of life. Again, we live in a really big city. But I also believe this works in the suburbs as well. Aniki alluded to it. Otherwise, you're just all over the city all the time. And right now, you might feel like you're all over the city all the time. But just begin making some shifts so that you're not having to be all over the place. When we moved here, I didn't know what this was. And I was looking for a doctor that had a parking lot. So we still drive down to Daly City to go to our pediatrician, and I'm not giving her up. So she is not in my quadrant. So I would have to put pediatrician outside of the quadrants, okay? But, so do think about just where your life takes you. It might, some of them are probably floaters. They're outside of it. But think about doing as much as you can in those 4. And let's just say, it's expensive to live here anyway. So, you know, when we moved here, I went to Foods Co. Anybody ever been to Foods Co? Foods Co, because I couldn't afford, Safeway just was too expensive. But then I realized, wait a second, I'm driving. I'm spending gas money to go to Foods Co. when I could just be going to Safeway right here. So, you know, city is expensive, so we can't use that really as our reason for why we have to drive all the way over here to go to this grocery store. So put down as many things as you can in those 4 areas. Again, Anaki said this, if we say yes to everything, we find ourselves all over the place. So think in quadrants. Think where life can be in these 4 neighborhoods. The key of quadrants is to make choices that overlap life as much as possible into 4 geographical locations. The idea with this is to simplify. And I believe when we simplify, we start making those connections that go deep. I'll just tell you a few ways this works for me. In our school quadrant is also my gym where I go to the gym. It's where we go to the dentist. It's where Ben does his sermon walks. It's where we go to the park. It's where we go to the library. So I'm putting all of those in that one quadrant, okay? We use our neighborhood grocery store and the library, often run into our neighbors because we're out walking and we're not hopping into the car. That's another big thing. And here's what I believe. It's not just, I believe the world is living like this. I believe the world is already, my friend Jen, she does all of her life on 24th Street, all of it. I don't think she gets in the car at all. So I know I'm going to always run into Jen either at the grocery store, at the gym, at the school, at the post office, at the library. I'm going to see her because she's already living this way, except she's just got one. She's doing everything right there. Elementary school, middle school, all in that one neighborhood. So I think we as Christians need to step it up and figure out how do we do life in quadrants, knowing that we've got the message of the hope of Jesus Christ ready to speak to that. Do this well with the kids, and then when it's time, they're going to be doing this in their own quadrants, okay? Now, because our older 2 are taking public transportation to get to their schools, we don't share quadrants anymore. They have now their own quadrants. Okay? So our kids are in neighborhoods that I'm not in anymore. I'm not in. But we are often talking about the people that they're influencing and doing life with. Sam is on Instagram. We have lots of rules on that, but Sam is on Instagram. But he showed me a picture. He's like, Mom, this is my cafeteria lady. She made it on Instagram. And it was a picture from SFUSD, but he recognizes her. So I'm high-fiving him that he knows what the cafeteria lady looks like, that often kids are probably just with their trays and going right back. So it's even teaching your kids to think in lives in quadrants. Now, when they're young, you're doing this together. But as you're walking, you're letting your kids make the eye contact with the dry cleaning person and introducing your kid to them. And when they get the sucker at the bank, the kid is the one making the eye contact to see who gave them the sucker. Not sucker comes to mom, goes to kid. Let the bank teller give the sucker to the kid. So they're making eye contact, and they're even learning at a young age to make connections with people. I believe if we're inviting God into our lives and we're looking for the beauty around us, we're also going to see the broken. Again, when we're doing this with our kids, you're going to see the broken in these quadrants. And they're going to see it as well, and this is a good thing. This is a good thing. When we moved here, I was scared to death of what our kids were going to see. And even having stories with some of you, you were learning that them seeing the broken right alongside us are those invitations to pray, those invitations to give grace, those invitations to say, I see what you're feeling. Listen to this story. I read Bethel pastor, Bill Johnson, I think. He and his wife wrote a parenting book called Raising Giant Killers. He tells a story of his son Jeff, who was in Little League for so many years, that it shocked him when his son Jeff decided he was done with Little League. and started picking up the guitar and going back to his bedroom and teaching himself guitar. And he was mourning the fact that his son was no longer going to baseball. He was no longer getting to hang out with the families that were doing Little League with. And he's just thought, okay, I got to sit back and see what God's doing with this. So Jeff starts meeting up with his buddies at the park in his neighborhood. And on one side of the park are Satan worshipers. And Jeff and his buddy are at the other side of the park playing worship songs. Over time, people start meeting one another at the park. And now Jeff is the one who writes all the songs for Bethel Music. But you think, what if Dad had said, nope, son, you are a Little League ball player. That's who you are. That's what you're going to be. Put the guitar down. Or to say, hey, we got to get in our car because we have to go here, and we have to go here, and we have to go here, and we have to go here. But it was him picking up the guitar and going to the park right in his neighborhood. And now look at what he's become and what he's doing. So we just never know what our kids are seeing that we're not even seeing, and what's stirring in our kids that it's not stirring in our hearts. These places are also connection points. So your quadrants are where you go and connect. Down here near the church is a chai bar out here on Market Street. If I'm going to have a meeting outside of Epic, that's where I love to go, because I've met one of the baristas there named Israel, and he's in the book. But Israel, when he told me his name, I'm thinking, there's more to your name than just your mom just decided Israel. So he started telling me about how he was named. I tell him our kids' names. We come to know that he's a believer, we're believers. And so now I love to bring people there if we're meeting here in this quadrant so they can hear more of Israel's stories. And I love it. He'll just step away from his job and come over and pray for whoever I'm meeting with. Okay, those are connection points that are happening in our quadrants. Annalisa's here. I knew her mom, Carol, before I knew her, because Carol and I work at the gym in our quadrant. And but it was by working out at the gym with Carol, that I learned about you. And then in learning about you, learning you wanting to do homeschool. And I was like, I've got friends that do homeschool. So then I've connected them, and they know B and the Kills, right? It's connections. It's being in your neighborhood and paying attention and being present. And again, quadrants, connector, storyteller, all of these things overlap. But I believe, and I list a lot of benefits of quadrants in the book, but I believe my favorite one is that we can go deeper in less space, giving us more time. We're talking about, hey, what did you call it? Slack time, free time, margin. We're going to get more of that if we're not driving all over the place. We'll get more of that. You're going to see that, hey, if we can do the grocery store on the way to the library, on the way to the hardware store, and we're going by foot, we're going to make more connections than I have to get in the car and drive down to Target and then across town to go to Home Depot, right? You get it. Okay, next one is circles. Circles are groups of people that often form themselves. Seasons of life put us in circles. Things that we have in common put us in circles. Circles can last a very long time, or they might just last a season. Your preschool class, taekwondo, music class, mom's group, guys' nights. Guys' nights, do you have guys' nights? Girls have girls' nights. Guys, you need a guys' night. That's a circle right there, okay? Some of us fill our calendar with so many kid circles that we often fail to have our own circles, okay? So make sure all your circles aren't packed with kids' activities. However, kid activities can lead you to more connections and storytelling because of who you know in those circles. But just make sure you're giving yourselves your own circles as well. Circles are important. They inspire us. They're helpful when they aren't always work-related, but are hobby, season of life focused. Again, Atul nailed us. We're in all-star city, right? We're all pushing for it. We've all got work circles, but make sure that you create time for these circles of hobbies where you're not discussing work, you're not discussing kids, but you're learning something for yourself, something fun. Circles, I believe, are also like small groups that we have at church. They need tending, caring, and celebrating. Circles come with hellos and goodbyes. We're in and out of circles a lot. I tend to, of the three that we're talking about, quadrants, circles, and hubs, I struggle with circles the most. I think a lot has to do with I'm a control freak, and if I didn't form the circle, I don't feel like sometimes it's okay if I don't show up. They're less committal than that. But all three of these can even overlap, quadrants, circles, and hubs. We have our circles in our home. We also have circles in our quadrants. One of our circles is our home. Okay, that was formed already for you when you decided to get married and bring kids into the world, and you have a home. So now I want to go into hub. Your home is a circle, but your home is a hub. And in this image, the inside of the circle is home. That is where you live. That is a geographical location. It's a place on the map. It's inside a quadrant. It is a circle because you were all doing life together. But it's got spokes coming out. And those spokes coming out are going to your neighbor. Going to your neighbor. Okay? You might have 4 neighbors. We lived on a dead-end street that there were 8. So that was pretty and clean. Now I can't even count how many homes I feel like we're surrounded by. As a hub, and I think this is just where it gets really fun with your hub, you get to make it whatever you want it to be. You get to make it whatever you want it to be. It's yours. And Ben and I went through a season of grieving. I feel like Christmas Day was like the pinnacle of it. Where we're like, we don't have little kids anymore. And our kids are just at a different place in life. And I think so much of when they're little, I relive so much of my childhood, right? Their birthdays remind you of your birthdays and how you did life growing up. And then I think now, wow, they've got opinions. And, they don't want to do what we want them to do. And they're thinking for themselves. And I'm like, wow, where did that childhood go? But then I have to remind myself, like, wait a second. We get to create what home looks like. And I feel like for us, we're in these teenage years where at this point, they're seeing everything and they're starting to decide what their futures look like and how much of that they want to mimic that they see going on in our homes. So I really do think that hubs really can be a lot of fun. You get to set Anaki has taught this to me before, we get to set the temperature, the spiritual temperature in our homes. We get to decide if, for our family, after whoever wins the board game, they get to lead the victory dance and we all have to follow. Like, you don't have to do victory dances at your house if you don't want to, but we're going to do victory dances. So you get to decide what your home looks like. And there's just so much creativity there. And oftentimes we can get, at night when we're praying for our classmates and our friends at school, it can discourage me because I just think about, wow, what we get to do as a family, being together, being that tribe, and just thinking we're praying for kids who don't have this. Which leads me to the point that hubs also are places where we invite people over. They get to see life. They get to see life in how we do it. They might do it differently, and that's cool. But when they get to step into our home, they get to see how we do life. So our homes are intended to be refuges, right? But our homes are also intended to be blessings. And I think it's this give and take. It's what you calendar. Hey, we're going to have people in, or we're going to go out, or we're going to keep the doors closed for this week. We've learned in the past few years to bring double dates in our home. So we're not going out because our kids right now are, they stay needy. I don't know if they grow out of that. But right now, it just feels that they're very needy of mom and dad being at home. So we'll have date nights inside. We'll have another couple come over. And if they don't have kids, then they can come over at 8 o'clock because they don't have anyone to put to bed. But yet our kids are upstairs reading. And it does feel like a date night, especially if I'm ordering out and not cooking. So figure out how you want to make your home the hub. We've done things. We got an ice cream maker. And so we invited everyone on the block to come sample our ice cream. We've done an egg hunt, and no one showed up. So there's those things too. We had all this, and what do you do with all your Amazon cardboard boxes? We built an arcade. We made skee ball and You would grow it with Bozo the Clown. Do you remember watching that show where you drop the bucket? Thank you, Chad. We made that. The kids didn't understand what I was talking about, but I knew exactly. I was picturing it in my mind. So we made an arcade, and we invited the kids in the neighborhood to come to that. I told you about pizza night. In the strategic family chapter, I talk about strategic families. We treat home as headquarters, the city as a playground, and the church as extended family. Again, home is headquarters. This is where they're learning all the information from you so that they know how to live it out in other places. I think you can create systems and rhythms at home that bring stability for the good of your family, but also for the good of the city. We believe that if we're doing life well at home, if we're thriving at home, it's going to affect how our kids are on the bus, at school, at work, wherever we go. If home can be stable, it's really going to have a difference when we're out in our quadrants and when we're inside our other circles. And lastly, for hubs, I'm going to say establish a home where God's presence matters more than anything else in your home. Establish a home where God's presence matters more than anything else in your home. We are learning and still learning just how to, even when Ben and I will get into an argument, and one of the kids might have heard it, or even if they didn't hear it, they can see the tension or feel the tension in the room. We're just learning to say, hey guys, we need you to come here. Mom and Dad messed up. One of us said something we shouldn't have said, and we are forgiving one another, but we also want you to see that. So let homes be that place of grace, because again, what they're hearing at home is also what they're carrying out with them to the world. I was going to give maybe if there's one or two questions, maybe I completely missed something, and you wanted me to speak into that. Is there one or two questions I could answer? Covered it all. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, ask them.
Yours would be great. So I'm new to this city, moved here just a couple months ago, and a big part of what we did in the smaller town where we're from was just hospitality, which I think culturally it was less uncommon for the unchurched to be invited in. I'm genuinely curious your opinion. Like, how do people receive that here? Those that are like unchurched, if you invite them in, is that a normal thing, or is that like, wow, this is not something that people normally do, and it's sort of an edge, or how does that fit in your opinion?
I would say, and some of you might want to speak into this, I would say from my experience, like inviting them into my home first and foremost would seem a little odd. But as we've gotten to know them or have a reason for them to come over, it seems a lot more receptive.
Sure. Great.
Justin.
So when we got here, before we had kids, we lived in Mission Bay, and we didn't know anybody, and we were broke. So there was a free cooking class that they had. Free means you pay rent for it, in the building, and that's when we met a couple from Boston, and they didn't know anybody either. And so the next Easter, it was us and them having an Easter meal together, and they're not really churched at all. And from there, the next Easter, it then spread out to two more friends that we met, and that was cool. So that's one example. Another example, in our condo complex now, there are a growing number of children with their families that are moving in. And what we'll see is, we've seen other people put a flyer in the elevators that say, play date in the courtyard at 2 p.m. on Saturday, because they just want their kids to meet some other kids, because there's just not a ton there. And no one's asking, like, are you churched, are you not churched? It's just, like, any one of us could host that, right? And just because someone has children and they want them to have something fun to do, and Bayview's not a place where you just go to the park necessarily outside across from you yet, that it's drawing people to it. And so I think both of those scenarios, the one very personal and the other general, are working pretty well.
And I think, like, people are open to hospitality necessarily, like, when you develop the relationships, I think, in home. But then, as you know, there's other ways to be hospitable, right? So for me, it could be, my kid goes to school inside a canyon. And so it's, let me walk in your kid today. And so I can be hospitable in other ways than passive, like, hey, come over, but more of like, let me lend a hand. And those type of things, people are more, I feel, people are more receptive to that So I think that we can make a big impact as Christians, as followers of Christ, by just not being weird, but by being honest.
And I think to Atul's point, I love when you said travel as a tribe, because people are like, whoa, that whole family's together. I see a whole unit here. I think just make it who we become. Like, even if they say no, you made you made the ask. You extended hospitality. That's good. All right, one more question.
So, how have you gone from shallow conversations with people, like, say, other moms at baseball practice or whatever? Like, how do you go from shallow conversations to, like, one step deeper with people that you're talking with and making connections with?
That's good. Prayer is a big piece and it's an essential piece. I keep a list of my time list and my prayer list, meaning these people are open and I can actually spend time with them, and these people are not open, so they're on my prayer list. And my favorite part is when I get to draw arrows, because they've moved list. So I try to make it all about them. And by making it all about them, then they're not having to be the one that's looking for the connection point. I get to be on the side that's looking for the connection point. So just asking them questions, and then looking for a way to go deeper. I learned this one just recently. When it comes to faith, is asking them, like, if they just seem turned off. You've already maybe shared where you go to church or that you're a person of faith, and they just seem turned off to it. To ask the question, well, what do you think God's like? Everyone's got an opinion or picture of what they think God's like. What do you think God's like? Chances are, if they're turned off to religion, they've got the wrong view of God anyway. And you can say, yeah, I don't see God that way either. And then you can say, but this is who God is to me. This is what it says about him in the scriptures. Now, for me to have those conversations, that's, way down the line. I tend to, sweaty palms, stick to the surface for a while. But God is so good. I think the more practice you get at it, then he's just like, oh, just wait, I'm going to send you one, and they're going to be ready. And then it's really exciting to see, how that grows. Okay. We're all going to be hanging out, keep mingling. We can keep having these conversations. I want us to close in prayer. And as we do, I want us to stand up, and I want us to form a circle. We won't be able to go around the entire building, but maybe we can kind of weave through maybe this one of these rows here. I want us to form a circle and hold hands. And Rachel is going to close us out in prayer. But let me read, as you're forming the circle, let me read this paragraph. A strategic family raises a generation, not just a child. We have 4 kids in our family. If we take our quadrants and circles and we multiply by the number of 6, we can really make a big impact. Again, right? If we're going to show me a family on mission, and I'll show you world changers, when you think about who you're raising and you multiply that, this is discipleship at its core. Let's live this well. In my city and at this moment, it is highly possible to reach an entire people group, the children of San Francisco. But we need strategic families here. We need believers awake, brave, and involved. I'm seeing families that are getting to know their neighborhoods and building better programs at their schools. The climate is changing. Now's not the time to bail on your city, but to be the people, the families who make it better, more stable, and more grounded in the truth of Jesus Christ. What impact can your family have? And as we close, I know that there's a group of people here that are moving to start Sanctuary Church, Tim and Josie Shaw. And raise your hand if you're with that group. Tom. Awesome. So epic, how incredible that we've got more people moving into the city who believe what we believe and are going to continue to grow and spread here. So Rachel, as you close us in prayer, keep them in mind.
Lord, thank you for this morning and this day. God, we thank you for the wisdom from Shauna and her obedience to write these words down in this book, God, and share them with us. Father, we thank you that you've brought us all here today knowing that we're here for a purpose. God, that you have brought some that haven't even planted here yet, but that are eager and excited, God, and we thank you for them. We thank you for those that are planting their church here in this city, God. But today, after today, God, help us, Father, to lean into how you've uniquely made each of us, God. That our walks are going to look different, that our circles, our quadrants are going to be different, God. But to know that we were called there in those quadrants and in those circles for a reason. Father, I pray that after this talk today, God, that we would have our ears and our hearts open, Father, to how you want us to plant those seeds, to have those conversations, to love the people that are in those quadrants and circles, Father. I pray that, Father, when we leave here, that we leave out here with a posture of being open to whatever you have for us, God. We are your people, we are your disciples, God, and we want to bring glory to your name. Help us to not be weird, but to be loving, God, to invite people in to different places and spaces where you are. We're grateful, God. Help us to extend your love and your mercy and your grace everywhere we go. In your precious name we pray. Amen.